So good evening everyone, I'm Vishal Salsekar and today we are going to discuss the News Today edition for the 27th of August, right? So today we are going to cover total 6 main news in this particular News Today discussion, and apart from that there are certain quick updates. In the main news, the first important article that we are going to discuss is regarding the US imposition of the additional tariffs on India. So the secondary tariffs or the secondary application of the tariffs that the Trump was saying that are now applied on India. Next article that we are going to discuss is the comprehensive modular survey regarding education. So what are the observation of this specific survey? What kind of disparities this survey is talking about when we are talking about the rural as well as the urban India with respect to the education? We are going to discuss that also. Next is regarding the voluntary national review report of 2025, which is released by Niti Aayog now. So in this particular report, what kind of progress that we had made regarding the achievement of the sustainable development goal and what are the areas where we can improve upon. So the important things that we are going to discuss. Next is regarding the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. So what this particular article of Paris Agreement talks about regarding the designated national authority that we are going to discuss in detail and what are the benefit of this. Next is the energy storage system. So in today's News Today, predominantly if you talk about these particular articles and specifically the last three, they are talking in some way or other prominently regarding the renewable energy or the reduction of the carbon emission, or to some extent this Niti Aayog report also that we are going to discuss. The last is the PM inaugurates the Green Mobility Initiative. That also we are going to see that how it is going to boost the production of the EVs, right? Apart from that, there are quick updates. So in the quick updates, there is the places in news, Australia, that we have already discussed previously, but now we are going to discuss it again because it is there in news again. Then apart from that, there are certain other quick updates that we will see. So let's start the discussion for the today's news. The first article that we have to discuss is regarding the 25% additional tariff that is imposed on India by the US that are now coming into the effect from today onwards. So when we are saying the additional tariff, then there must be already certain tariffs that are on India, right? So 25% tariffs that are already on India, and now including this 25% additional tariff, it increases it to the 50%. So when it compares to the countries like China, countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, so now India is having at the 50% tariff bracket, and these particular countries as of now are at comparatively lower bracket. So how it is going to impact the Indian exports, specifically the exports from the MSME sector or the sectors which are not that much having the capital availability, right? So what government should do further, that we are going to discuss. So from the UPSC's perspective, from the GS paper 2 and GS paper 3. Why GS paper 2? Because of the international relation, the changing global dynamics, how the international relations are being played through the economic diplomacy, and then the GS paper 3 where we are going to talk about the trade policies, the impact of the developed countries, specifically their economic policy, how they are going to shape the economic aspects as far as India is concerned. So what are the key highlights regarding this? So already we have discussed a lot in the context of the tariff, but if I give you a brief idea regarding what tariffs are and how they are going to play. So assume that suppose if there are certain number of products that you are going to export from country A, which is India, to country B, which is US. Now suppose if you are selling this particular mouse, now maybe this is of 100 rupees. Now if the US is applying 50% tariff on this particular mouse, then there must be 50% increase in the cost of that particular product. So in the United States, now this particular product will be of 150 rupees because of the 50% tariff. Now assume that the countries like Vietnam, China, Bangladesh, they are also manufacturing these kind of mouse. Maybe 25%, maybe 30% tariff on their products. So when they are selling the 100 rupees ka mouse in that particular country, which is United States, now in that particular country, this mouse will be comparatively at the cheaper cost available. So 125, 130 rupees, whichever the tariff bracket is, right? So now the Indian export which are going to United States, exempting certain specific category of product, those particular products are going to get costlier. When the product gets costlier in eventual international relations, as far as the economy is concerned, the product become costlier, and hence the basic need for those particular product, if the alternatives are available, for example alternatives from Vietnam, China, maybe Bangladesh, so then Indian product ka demand is going to get decreased. When the demand is going to get decreased, entire volume of the trade between these two countries, specifically from the India's export perspective, that is going to get declined. This is the simple funda of the tariff. Now what has been done? Additional tariff or the secondary sanctions that are being put. Now why Trump is so much vocal about India? One such issue that is bothering the President of the United States of America is the India's purchase of oil from the Russia. But this is the dichotomous situation, or this is a irony, that their allies, India is not an ally of United States, right? Their allies are still purchasing, as highlighted by our External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, that their allies are still purchasing the oil and the natural gases, right? So in that particular context, when those are doing, it's fine. When the China is, which is the largest buyer of the Russian oil, China does that particular thing, then that's also fine. But when India is purchasing the Russian oil, which was predominantly initiated by the policy of United States, that if suppose karo, any specific country is not purchasing that additional oil that Russia is taking out from their wells, right? So in that particular cases, don't you think so? If the supply increases a lot, but if there is no such demand of that particular oil, agar supply bahut zyada badh jati hai, then the price might crash. In that particular scenario, it was India who was making this stability as far as the oil prices are concerned. But now, since the geostrategic policies of the United States are not that much aligned as far as the India's geostrategic aspects are concerned, see, broader level par, there are still comparative bonhomie. But to some extent, because of the recent aftermath of the Operation Sindoor, there were certain frictions that were visible between the India and Australia relationship. Whether it is because of the utilization of the US-based platforms, right? Whether it is the Trump's statement regarding that he brokered the ceasefire between these particular two countries, and when India rejected that specific thing, then that irked the ego of the personality. Now, in those particular situations, these kind of measures are being done. Now, when another things that are going on, for example, 2+2 dialogues you might have already heard of. So generally, the Minister of Defense as well as the Minister of External Affairs, they are meeting in the 2+2 dialogue. But in between their meetings, there are certain intersessional dialogues that are also there. So recently, we had the intersessional dialogues with the United States in the virtual format. And there also, even after that, there have been the secondary sanctions that were done. Because the way the policies of the United States, which were like meeting the President Vladimir Putin in Alaska and trying to go for a ceasefire, that did not work. So there have been the imposition of the additional tariffs on India. Now, this particular 2+2 dialogues, one such thing they have highlighted is that defense partnership we are going to carry forward. See, economic wala thing will not spill over to the other domains. So that's why they said that there will be a 10 years framework which India had signed that will continue. Right, so there is no such issue with respect to that. But again, when there are issues that occurs or started occurring in the relationship, it tries to impact all the specific domain where the cooperation is being observed. Now, what will be the impact of the tariff on India? I have, in one specific explanation, I have already explained to you. So now let's see these things. First is regarding the export. So it has been observed by different bodies which are concerned with respect to the trade, that when the tariffs are additionally imposed on India, the secondary sanctions are being imposed on India, and total tariff, which is now 50% cumulatively, in that specific context, it is bound to reduce the export of the Indian product which are under this particular ambit of the sanctions, right? So in that case, the product ka export is going to get declined. So roughly, if you see the last year's data, it was roughly $87 to $88 billion that India had exported. Now there are chances that that particular export might be halved to the level. So roughly, it is estimated that $48 to $49 billion will going to get the trade volume of India's export to the United States. So there is a substantial reduction of the export. Why so? Because of the lack of competitiveness. Why there is lack of competitiveness? Because of the additional tariff. Now the products will be apparently more costly in the United States of America. Now that is also going to impact United States because their people might not be getting that much cheaper product in their country, which might be leading to the issues like inflation that will be associated with the same. Now next is the most affected industries. So there are certain exemptions that are being provided. For example, for the electronic products. For example, certain other sectors like the steel, aluminium, to some extent, there have been certain relief that is being provided, even for the pharmaceuticals. But then there are sectors like which are the low margin and the labor intensive sectors, like the products developed from the MSMEs, like the gems, jewelries, textile, apparels, the shrimps, auto component. These are going to get a major hit because the 50% tariff will be cumulatively now going to apply on this. Next is regarding the loss of competitiveness. Now try to relate it with point one, that when the tariffs are additionally going to be imposed on the Indian products, there will be a lack of competitiveness. Why? Because the product will be apparently costly in the United States. That's why the Indian products will be comparatively expensive. Lastly, the foreign inflow. So generally, when you are going to invest more in any specific country, when you are going to have the confidence in that country, right now the investors themselves are not very sure that what will be the policy of the president of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump, that tomorrow he is going to additionally sanction further percentage of the tariff, right? So now the people are thinking that if we are going to invest in India, and if the India is going to retaliate, what will be to our investment? Whether our investment will be going to give us the dividend, or it is going to take a toll on us, right? So in that case, the FDI inflow and even the FPI related investment will be the volatile sector. So comparatively, जो investment हो रहा था, that particular investment was continuing. Now there have been the issues with respect to the investment. So that sector is also going to get a hit. Now, what should be the way forward? So see, we have the broader range of cooperation. Though we have primarily doing the defense deal with Russia and the France, but to some extent with respect to certain prominent and the foundational deals like Limoa, like Comcasa, like Bika, right? So these particular deals that we had done with the United States of America in order to ensure the cooperation, in order to ensure a better interoperability. So defense is one such thing where we can cooperate further. Obviously, do not get dominated by the policies of the United States. But when it comes to the sovereign decision, India is having all the wherewithal in order to ensure that there should be ensuring the interest of the Indian industries. So in that specific sense, it is now to India in order to respond to the tariffs. So how India is going to respond? So right now, what are the things that the government is focusing upon? Government is focusing upon incentivization on the sectors that are going to get a major hit. Now, how you are going to get incentivized? So you can reinstate the interest equalization scheme. So specifically for the MSMEs, which are going to get impacted after this particular secondary sanctions, there the product is going to get costly. So in the domestic market, you can give them certain low export credit. So in that sense, the product ka cost at India level will be comparatively cheaper. And now when the tariffs will be applied, wo equalize kar dega to some extent to the price of that particular product. That will make the Indian products comparatively competitive. So here in the interest equalization scheme, you can provide the low cost export credit to the people who are manufacturing. Next is the introducing the targeted credit lines. So to some extent to certain sectors which are going to get impacted, like the shrimp, apparel sector, the jewelry, handicraft. To these particular sector, what you can do, you can provide certain line of credit, means collateral free loan you can provide. You can also provide certain interest free loans. You can extend the duration of the repayment. So through this, there will be credit rearrangement and the people will be able to get that particular financial strength in order to counter the United States policy. Next is enhancing the export incentive scheme. So upper two things are also to some way talking about the export ko ensure karna, so that there will be incentivized kara jaye export ko, right? So for that, what you are going to do, remission of the duties and taxes for the export products, right? So this particular thing like the remission for the duties and taxes. So to some extent we can provide the relaxation also. Rebate on the of the state and the central taxes and levies. Matlab whatever central taxes and whatever levies that are being taken on those particular products, we can relax those things because they are the part of the domestic market. We can incentivize those specific sectors. Lastly, the simplified regulatory process and rationalized duty. So whatever we can do in order to ensure the ease of doing business, in order to ensure the process simplification, we should be striving to do that in order to ensure our robust domestic market. Now see, it's not only one country which we should be concerned about. Yes, though it is a major country, though it is a major economic partner, though it is a major defense partner. But right now, we are living in a multipolar world order where it should not be only one country which should be dictating the entire global order. So India should also not lay all the eggs in the single basket and should try to ensure that there should be distributed risk that should be there, right? And even one such additional information regarding this, many such countries in the European Union, specifically Germany, is not that happy with the policies of the United States in order to alienate India. Because what is happening because of this, now India is trying to go and cooperate more with the countries like China, which they do not want. So in that case, if the US is going to alienate India, to some extent, obviously there will be a bonhomie that will be developed in the other countries' relation with India, which basically sees the opportunity in this. So there have to be strategic recalibration also. Now, how UPSC asked the question regarding this. So with the waning of the globalization, post-Cold War world is becoming a site of the sovereign nationalism elucidate. This particular year, UPSC had asked the question regarding how the deglobalization is going to get reflected. The policies of the Trump that are reflecting the unfolding of the deglobalization, like making America great again, and the narrative of the America first thing that is talking about the deglobalization era. So to some extent, you can utilize the economic wala aspect from this article. Next is the what introduces the friction into the ties between the India and US is that Washington is still unable to find the India for India a position in its global strategy which would satisfy India's national self-esteem and the ambitions. Aftermath of the Operation Sindoor also, though Trump thought that he had ensured that there should be peace and the India will also be happy, but obviously no, because we were on the victorious side. We had inflicted a lot and the heavy damage on the Pakistan in providing the counter response to the terrorist activities, right? So in that particular case, if you are saying that we have brokered the deal because we asked them, if you are not going to agree, there will be economic sanctions. So this is not the acceptable thing for India. So US is not able to identify what things and themes will be ensuring the national self-esteem and the ambitions. So these things can also be utilized, whether it is economic, whether it is strategic, whether it is the post-Cold War global order. Jahan par India has to cooperate, India is cooperating, but where India has to give the response, India is also giving the response, right? So this is regarding the US tariff policy. Next is regarding the Ministry of Statistics and the Program Implementation, MOSP, which has released the Comprehensive Modular Survey regarding education, CMSE 2025. Now, from the perspective of UPSC, the GS paper 2 is the subject where the social justice may you have the aspect of education, which is part of it, and even the governance, because the education related aspects are also part of the governance, right? Any specific policy of government. Now, what are the highlights of this? The Comprehensive Modular Survey of Education. So this is being conducted by the National Statistics Office, NSO, which is under the Ministry of the Statistics and the Program Implementation. Now, this holistic survey was part of the National Sample Survey that this particular ministry and under that ministry, National Statistics Office is performing, right? Now, what are the observations that they are doing? So this particular survey is talking about that how the household are spending on the education. When we are talking about education, obviously there is a cost associated with that education, right? So this is the expenditure related information in this context that is being talked about, and based upon that, they have identified certain trends. Now, when they are talking about the government school, so the penetration of the government school and the enrollment of the student. Now, this is talking about from the perspective of all India level. So this is roughly 55.9. So the 56% approximately total enrollment in the country are in the government schools. Now, this is not only about the rural. This is including the rural and urban ka both ka average, right? So this is 55.9%, which is the total enrollment in the government school. Now, obviously, when we are talking about government school, comparatively fee structure is relaxed. Very minimal amount of fees is there. The infrastructural cost is not that much, right? A lot of extra things are not taken from the parents, right? So in that cases, there will be comparatively cheaper education available, which is also affordable to the all. Now, in that case, they are also talking about when we are distributing it within the rural and the urban areas. So this penetration of or the enrollment of the students in the rural areas in the government school is roughly 66%. But when it comes to the urban areas, this dips to 30%. That talks about that in the rural areas, the people are more or the students are more likely to opt for the enrollment in the government school as compared to the urban area. This is giving the dichotomous situation. Next is talking about the expenditure. So what is the average expenditure that the family is spending on the children? So average expenditure per student is roughly 8,382 rupees. And this particular thing in the rural area. When it comes to the urban areas, it becomes roughly 2.5 to 3-fold, which is roughly 23,470 rupees. So this is a situational dichotomy that in the rural areas, comparatively, the cost that is associated with the school enrollment and the other expenditure that is lesser as compared to the urban area. Now, the reason is very, very simple. In the rural areas, majority of the students are part of the government infrastructure, government school. But in the urban areas, only 30%. That's why this cost is shoot up. Next is the private coaching. So there is not that much visible difference when it comes to the percentage में number of students. So 27% students across India that are taking certain kind of private coachings with respect to the school education. Now when we are talking about this, 27% average, and in that urban areas 30%, rural areas 25%. So broadly 27% is the average. But when it comes to the cost in the urban areas is roughly 4,000 rupees, 3,988. But when it comes to urban areas, it is less than half, 1,793 rupees. That means that even despite there is no much difference in the number of students and the percentage, there is significant difference and the significant gap with respect to accessing the coachings. So 3,988 vis-a-vis 1,793. Next is regarding funding for education. So what do we mean by funding? Who is funding your education? Obviously your parents, right? So in the family members are funding your education. So in that cases, it is mentioned that roughly 95% of the funding is provided from the side of the parents or the family members. But when it comes to the government support as far as the scholarships are concerned, so this is roughly 1.2%. So 1.2% wala aspect is from the government scholarships that they are taking. Clear? So these are the observations that are being provided by this particular modular survey. Now, what is this national sample survey? So when we have already talked about that this national sample survey is conducted under the ambit of the Ministry of Statistics and the Program Implementation, MOSPI, right? So this is responsible for conducting the pan-India survey based upon different themes. Now they are conducting the large-scale sample survey. Now sample survey, it is not like that all the people they are doing the survey of, right? So they are taking a sample from different set of audience. For example, in this case also with respect to education, aisa nahi ki they have went for each and every school, each and every student they had encountered. They had taken a large sample, maybe 50,000, 55,000 students across different part of the country, and then they came to know regarding the trend. So this is not absolute data. This is the trend based data, right? So now they are conducting the large scale sample survey in the diverse fields. Now what fields they are doing the survey regarding? So annual survey of industries, this talks about whatever the inputs that are needed for industries, whatever the outputs are there, what is the value addition, what percentage is the value addition, all these things they are taking care of in the annual survey of industries. Next is the periodic labor force survey. So you might have seen a lot of data regarding that women's participation with respect to the employment sectors, then the participation of this particular age range. So the periodic labor force survey, that the labor force में किस तरीके से changes observe हो रहे हैं, what kind of changes are being observed, whether it is the composition of the male and female or any other kind of changes. Then the household consumption and expenditure survey, that talks about the trend with respect to what are being consumed, what kind of changes and the pattern changes with respect to the consumption, right? Now see, this kind of data, generally whenever the questions are there can be question regarding education. Now the issues with respect to education, the disparity and the gap with respect to education, you can highlight and you can quote the national sample survey or the comprehensive modular survey, and then you can put the data, approximate data with respect to this. So in order to ensure the approximate data, you should have certain notes of this data. So take the notes for education. Education mein these things are there, urban versus rural disparity, and there you can write this data that can give the value addition to your answer, right? Next particular article that we are going to discuss is the Niti Aayog's report regarding the Voluntary National Review Report, VNR report 2025. So a few days back also this was discussed, and at that point of time it was the topic that the Niti Aayog has placed this particular report. Niti Aayog has prepared this report, and now this report comprehensively has been released. Okay. So from the perspective of UPSC, generally from the perspective of GS2 and GS3, this is important GS2 mein, because a lot of things that are part of the sustainable development goal and the progress with respect to that are part of either governance or the social justice, and sometimes or not sometime, in majority of the times GS paper 3, which is including the economy, which is also including the aspects regarding the sustainable development, all these are part of this environment and ecology and all. So this is important from the examination perspective. Now this is also going to provide you certain data, certain kind of approach regarding how the progress with respect to achievement of sustainable development goals is being done in India, right? Now, what India's approach is regarding sustainable development goals. So what is the Voluntary National Review Report that the Niti Aayog is doing? So Niti Aayog as an agency is providing the data regarding India's success story with respect to achievement of specific goals in the sustainable development goal that are mentioned. Like no poverty, zero hunger, maybe the aspect regarding the education, health, then the gender equality, availability of the sanitation. Okay. So all these things ke baare mein, what progress India is doing, what kind of approach India is taking, these things are being provided by this Voluntary National Review Reports, right? So now this is not for the first time Niti Aayog has released this report. Previously also in 2017 and 2020, they had released a similar kind of report regarding the progress on the front of the sustainable development goal. Now what kind of approach that India is adopting regarding the achievement of the sustainable development goal that this particular report is talking about? First aspect is the whole of the government and the whole of the society approach. Now just assume a scenario. No poverty, zero hunger, gender equality, adequate representation, urbanization, blue oceans, and a blue economy wala thing. Now see, you can see the diverse things. For example, one thing might be related to social justice, another might be related to polity, another might be related to environment. So it's not like that only in one domain they can do the task. So it needs different department, different ministries, different stakeholders that should be cooperating in order to ensure the success of achievement of the sustainable development goal. So it is talking about the whole of the government, different ministries, different department, different aspects should be cooperating through all the possible aspects, and the whole of the society approach. Now it's not only that the government can do all the things, there are a lot of things. For example, if there has to be incorporation of the digital education, so digital education government can impart, government can facilitate, but at the end of the day you are going to take that particular digital education, and then only you are going to get benefited from that reduction of the digital divide. Or whether government is providing you the facilitation with respect to the food security, so you will be the particular person who are going to take the benefit of that facility. So it includes the whole of the government and the whole of the society approach, which includes the government, non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations and all. Then the cooperative and the competitive federalism. So it's not only talking about that there should be always a center to state wala approach ki bhai states are the constituents, center will be the facilitator, center will provide all the support. No, there has to be certain initiatives that have to be taken by the state themselves. Some kind of indicator based upon which you can measure the progress at the state level. And in that context, there is need for the competitive and cooperative federalism. Cooperative, aapko pata hai that there will be a need and the support and the cooperation from the side of the states with the center. But competitive means states are competing with each other. They are doing progress on achievement of different sustainable development goal, and that is being measured through the SDG India index, that how they are progressing on achievement of sustainable development goal. Then the SDG localization model. So see, in that case also, aisa nahi hai ki at the central level only the things can be achieved and that will fulfill the task. No, the sustainable development goal incorporates a lot of things, which even includes the lowest of the lowest strata. And the third tier of the governance, which is the municipality and the panchayati raj institution. So SDG localization is also very important. When we are talking about gender equality, the participation in the third tier of the democracy, when we are talking about providing the tap water, so providing the tap water even to the most deprived section of society in the rural areas, so all these things will need the support from the side of the third tier. In that case, engaging district, blocks, villages will be very, very important. Lastly in this is the leveraging innovation. Now see, when you have to provide a lot of facilitation, when you have to gather a lot of data and utilization of that data in order to ensure comparatively better approach of targeting, those who might not have got the benefit now target those specific people. So here the India's digital public infrastructure, for example the Aadhaar, UPI for the direct benefit transfer, right, the gem trinity, all these things will become very, very important. So these are the highlights from the side of report. Now there is some data that is being provided with respect to this report with regard to the achievement of the sustainable development goal. Now that topic wise and the subject wise manner may you can utilize for writing your answer and doing value addition. For example, no poverty, which is SDG 1. So in the SDG 1 no poverty, there have been sharp reduction of the extreme poverty from roughly 16% in 2011-12, like from you can say last decade to this particular decade, which is now 2.3%, which led to the lifting of 171 million people from the extreme poverty. When it comes to the multidimensional poverty, so in multidimensional poverty, it is more than 250 million people which came out of that particular multidimensional poverty. The indicator mein jo constituents hai, they changes, but to some extent you can say that substantial progress has been done. With zero hunger, that means providing the adequate food supply, the nutritious food and all. So in that also the food grain production, obviously how you are going to provide the food supply? First, you have to ensure the comparatively better achievement as far as the production is concerned. So the production has also increased multifold. So 204.6 million 2004-5 se lekar 332 million tons 23-24. This has been the achievement regarding achievement of the zero hunger. Apart from that also there are a lot of achievement, but right now this is the important thing that you can write about. The gender equality, which is SDG 5, which talks about that representation should be adequate. Now, in that case, there have been in 2023, government has already passed the bill, which is, and that has been legislated as an act, which provides the support, which provides the reservation at the parliament and the legislative assembly and at the Panchayati Raj institution. 74th and 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act provided for minimum 33% reservation, right? So that has significantly led to the achievement of roughly 45% of the elected representatives at the lowest level, like the third tier level, are women. So that is talking about the SDG gender equality. With respect to certain other issues like the child marriages, like many other kind of atrocities against the women, that have also on the decline stage, right? Obviously, there are certain exceptions also, but to larger extent, we can say. Next is SDG 6, which is the clean water and the sanitation. So Jal Jeevan mission that was there, and that has led to reduction of the non-availability of the tap water in the rural area. So it has led to increase the supply of the tap water from 17% in 2019 to presently over 80% of the household that are getting the tap water supply. SDG 7 talking about the affordable and the clean energy. You know that recently we had discussed multiple articles where the non-fossil fuel based energy that is now composing of roughly 50% of the energy basket of India. So non-fossil fuel energy resources that have been significantly increased, and we have roughly achieved the 50% wala target which we had kept for 2030. Next is the SDG 9, which is the industry, innovation and the infrastructure. So there also India is progressing a lot, because recently you might have seen a lot of MOUs with the countries like Namibia, countries like Singapore, with respect to India's promotion of its digital public infrastructure, its innovation, its low cost solution, whether it is in the domain of space or whether it is in the domain of the pharmaceutical for the making life-saving medicines also, right? So all these things shows that India has done substantial progress. Is it clear? Okay. So like this, you can utilize this data whenever there is question regarding poverty, when there is question regarding gender inequality. So those things can be utilized in order to substantiate your answers. Next is regarding the Ministry of the Environment, Forest and Climate Change, MOEFCC, which has announced the National Designated Agency or the Designated National Agency for the Paris Agreement in order to implement the Article 6 of that. From the UPSC perspective, again, this is important from GS paper 3, conservation, environment, pollution and degradation, then the environmental impact assessment, carbon credit and trade. So even from the economy perspective also to some extent in GS paper 3, this can be a relevant aspect. Now what has been done recently, there has been a designated national agency or the nationally designated agency. That was a mandatory requirement that was put in the Paris Climate Agreement. Even before that, even the Kyoto Protocol, when that particular protocol was signed, at that point of time also, in order to implement its clean development mechanism, in order to ensure the carbon trading, there was this body that was being talked about, which is the designated national agency, which will be responsible for formulating the rules and cooperating with the different countries in order to ensure the carbon trade. Right. Now, what has been done? This was the mandatory requirement to ensure the carbon emission trading regime under Article 6.4 of the Paris Climate Agreement, right, 2015. Now, this organization or the agency which has been developed and which has been created has the responsibility by the party. Party means India. India is the party to this particular agreement. So the agency is being provided by the responsibility by the party in order to authorize and approve the participation in different projects. Sometimes what happens that there are joint collaboration. Sometimes what happens that there are certain green energy initiatives. Sometimes there is collaboration between different countries. Sometimes there are certain other things, right? So in order to ensure those things, this is the designated national agency in order to approve the project regarding this. So whether it is the GHG mitigation activities, whether it is the alternative material, for example, the green ammonia, green hydrogen, etc., whether it is the removal activities, for example, carbon capture, carbon sequestration, carbon storage, right? So for all these things, this is the designated authority. Now, what is the composition? There will be 21 member in this committee, and then there is representation from interministerial. Matlab different ministries have their representation, but majority representation comes from the Ministry of the Environment, right? And it will be headed by the Secretary of Ministry of Environment. So this is the composition. Now, eligible activities which are there for the project, that is for the carbon reduction trading and authorizing the project under Article 6.4. What is the carbon reduction trading? Generally क्या होता है? Whenever, suppose करो, there is a country A, there is a country B. Now suppose करो country A is India, and India has developed certain techniques because of which it is able to reduce the carbon emission. Maybe India का quota था regarding carbon emission, maybe 100 tons of the carbon India can emit as per the treaty. Now, when India has developed certain technology, now India is only emitting 50 tons. So 50 tons is still remaining. So for that 50 tons, India can convert that into the carbon credit, and now India can export that carbon credit or trade that particular carbon credit to other countries which might not be complying with their own quota. So in that case, what is happening that at the global level, the carbon ka jo emission, that is remaining same. But India, since it has developed certain technologies, is able to reduce the emission, provided the quota to certain other countries in return of the money. So India is getting money from that particular party. That party had got the credit in order to emit something more. Clear? So this is regarding the carbon credit or the carbon trade. Now, what is the Article 6 of the Paris Climate Agreement? So in the Paris Agreement, the Article 6 talks about that the country can pursue the voluntary cooperation to reach their climate target. So it is talking about the country's cooperation in order to develop certain solutions with respect to reaching the sustainable development, right? Now it is talking about establishment of the international compliance carbon market. So there is also an aspect which was talked in this particular Article 6 in order to ensure the internationally compliance carbon market. So in order to ensure the carbon trading. Now 6.4 specifically says the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism, where it allows country to transfer its carbon credit earned from the reduction of the greenhouse gases. I have given you example that India had reduced roughly 50 tons of the carbons. India had converted that into the carbon credits, and those credits were now transferred to certain other countries, obviously in exchange of money. That means India has given that India's quota of 50 tons of carbon emission to other country, right? Now, What is the carbon market? This is the carbon market where this trading is going on. So the designated national authority will be the authority that will regulate this market for India, that will also cooperate with different countries so as to ensure that aisa na ho ki there is no transparency in respect to this particular market and the countries are misutilizing this particular quota wala thing. And if that is misutilized, that means there are issues regarding checking of that whether the country has actually reduced the carbon emission or they are just doing it on the paper, right? So trading system where the carbon credits are being traded, one carbon credit is equivalent to 1 ton of carbon dioxide, right? So 1 ton of carbon dioxide emission is 1 credit. If you are saving this much, that means you are earning 1 credit and that can be traded, right? So now regarding the carbon emission wala technologies and carbon emission related approaches, you can talk about the India's approach, how India is doing this. India has designated a national authority and that national authority will be facilitating further the carbon credit market in India. Next is regarding the India requires $50 billion for the as a new investment in the energy storage system by 2032. That report is saying. Now see, when we are talking about the renewable energy, now renewable energy generally is of such a nature that sometime it is achieved and sometime it cannot be achieved because of the practical reason. For example, wind energy. If there is no wind, there will not be any wind energy. Maybe हो सकता है कि for a few hours there is no such kind of wind that is flowing. So in that case there is no wind energy. Suppose करो during the night time you will not be able to get the solar energy. So in that cases if there is certain storage device, because when it is a peak time, at that point of time a lot of energy that might be generated and there might not be that much utilization of the energy generated during the peak time. But the demand might come in the night time when you will need the energy but there is no sunlight. So in that particular cases, there will be the need for the storage devices which will be utilized as a backup, right? So this has been talked about in the report that if India want to achieve its target of 500 gigawatt of the renewable energy by 2030 and 600 by the 2032, then it will have to spend a lot on the storage devices that will make it sustainable and the cost effective. From the general studies, again GS paper 3, energy infrastructure, investment, economic growth, and also the sustainable development goal achievement because of the sustainable or the green energy initiatives, right? Now see, this is the report that is being released by the India Energy Climate Center. So this is the observation that they have mentioned that if India wants to achieve these targets that I have mentioned, like 500 gigawatt by 2030 as a renewable energy and 600 by 2032, then in that case India need to scale up the storage. Now when we are talking about storage right now, when we are sitting over here, it is roughly 6 gigawatt ka storage that we are having. And that too mainly from the limited sector. But then they are talking about that 61 gigawatt of the storage is needed by 2030 and roughly 97 gigawatt is needed by 32 in order to ensure the sustainable energy production, and that 500 and 600 gigawatt wala target to remain the sustainable. And sustainable, when I'm saying, the energy production should also be cost effective, because previously we were seeing that when it was not cost effective, there was not much utilization of the renewable energy resources. So we have to ensure that gradually as the technology is getting developed, that is also getting reflected in the energy storage devices, the cost of energy storage devices. You might have seen a lot of EVs that are being running now, and there is a large expansion of the infrastructure with respect to the charging, right? So for that obviously you will need the battery storage. When the cost is getting reduced, we have to tap the potential, we have to additionally invest in order to get the sustainable storage devices developed. Right. Now, there have been discussion also regarding the type of the energy storage devices, right? Or the energy storage related options that we are having. So first is the mechanical storage. In the mechanical storage, see what happens that suppose karo there is a solar panel that is converting the solar energy into electrical energy. Right now there is no much demand. So what you will do, you can ensure that solar energy might be ensuring certain mechanical thing. So mechanical thing means generally आप hydropower के लिए you are utilizing that particular water का storage का जो energy है, and that will be when flowing through the that particular dams ke through, and that will be moving the turbine, and that will generate the electricity. Now, in order to ensure that thing, you will need water at comparatively higher level and turbine at a lower level. But sometime what happens that particular thing utna scale nahi hai upar with respect to the energy that is stored in the water. So in that case, what you can do, when there is excess energy available with you, you can pump that water to the upstream region, and when there is a demand, you will throw that particular water. Obviously, you will allow that water to flow, and that will generate the electricity through the moving turbine. So this is the mechanical storage. You are utilizing electricity to pump the water up. Why? Because right now, otherwise also the energy would have wasted. So when there is no peak demand, when there is a large generation of the electricity, you can utilize it like this. So whether it is the pumped hydro storage or the compressed air energy storage, when there is excess energy, you can utilize that to compress the air, and then when there is a high demand time period, you can utilize that particular compressed air in order to move the turbine like devices, and then there will be generation of electricity. So this is the mechanical storage. What is the electrochemical storage? So you might have seen batteries. So how the batteries are functioning, there will be an anode, there will be a cathode. So there will be, if the batteries are rechargeable, so you will utilize electricity in order to charge that battery. The battery will be storing, you might have seen the inverter at your home. You will be charging, you are charging that particular battery once you have completely utilized the inverter ka jo time period, and then you will charge. So what you are doing, you are using the electrochemical storage in order to store the energy, so that when there will be again electricity cut off or maybe any issue that will happen, in that case you will utilize those battery ka electricity. So lead acid battery, lithium ion batteries, these particular batteries are the example under this. Next is the thermal energy storage. So what you are doing, you are utilizing energy thermally. Here you are utilizing energy mechanically by transferring, by suppressing or by expanding. Here what you are doing, you are changing the temperature. So for example, what you can do, you can utilize the excess energy that is available right now in order to store that energy in the form of heat or in the form of the cool temperature. For example, what you can do, you can use the excess energy in the form of the excess thermal energy, like the molten salt, hot and chilled water. So you can utilize that particular difference when there will be peak demand and there will not be utilization of electricity, but then when there will be demand, you can utilize the thermal energy storage devices in order to create the equilibrium. So there will be flow of energy, and that will ensure the electricity generation. Next is the electrical storage. So there are capacitors that are providing this facility of getting charged when there is excess electricity or excess energy, and that can be stored. So whether it is the supercapacitors, whether it is the superconducting magnetic energy storage, so these particular devices can be utilized for the electrical storage. So these are different avenues for providing an idea regarding the technology for the energy storage. Lastly is the chemical storage, again to some extent like batteries, but here generally they are using the electrolysis method, where the water is getting broken down in the form of hydrogen and oxygen, and through that you can utilize it in the form of hydrogen fuel. So when the excess energy is there, you can use the process for electrolysis, and then there will be separation of the hydrogen and oxygen, and then you can utilize that hydrogen energy in the time when the energy demand is high, but right now the energy is not that much available, so you can utilize that hydrogen fuel ka energy. This is regarding the technologies that you have to understand about. Now, what is the significance of the energy storage ka jo devices and the energy storage system that India have to develop? First thing is variable renewable energy into the grid. So it will not be only dependent upon the time period or the time of the incidence. For example, when solar rays are falling, then you are going to get the solar energy. No. If there is storage device attached to that particular solar panel, then even in the night time you are going to get the energy which is generated by charging that battery, right? So the variable energy, renewable energy into the grid, and the excess energy will be transferred to the grid also. So the grid also will be stable. There will not be much fluctuation in the grid. Increased electric mobility adoption. So if there is more storage devices, there will be better infrastructure with respect to the charging of the EVs, and the people are going to buy more. Right now, why people are not buying much EVs? Because one such issue is the charging infrastructure, because the capacity in one charge to move or the mobility is limited, maybe 100 200 kilometer. But suppose karo, if there is the charging station and the charging speed enhanced, like 5 minutes mein there will be capacity of 50 kilometer, then obviously people would want to adopt this particular new methodologies. Then maintaining the grid stability and the power quality, if there is these kind of electricity storage aspects with respect to the battery ecosystem, in that cases there will be comparative stability, because that will not be much fluctuation ki afternoon time mein there will be high energy supply, in the night time there will be comparative reduction, so high demand, so there will be comparatively balance that will be maintained, right? Now what are the policy aspects and the regulatory recommendation? So first is adding storage to the existing renewable energy project. So for example, right now whatever capacity that we have already developed, majority of the capacity may there is no such storage devices with respect to the energy that is getting generated. So there you can utilize this additional storage capacity with regard to that. Next is the mandatory co-located energy storage for the new renewable energy project. So when new energy renewable projects are being laid down, so there should be a mandatory classification, maybe 10%, 20%, you should be storing in the form of energy devices. For example, if it is generating 10 gigawatt, 1 gigawatt ke around, you should be doing the energy storage ka capacity. Next is the expanding viability gap funding, means try to go for additional aspect of generating funds in order to fund these projects. Next is promoting the domestic manufacturing and supply chain. So promote the domestic manufacturing and supply chain with regard to the development of the energy storage devices. There the cost and everything will come into the picture. Last major article, again on the similar topic, PM inaugurates the Green Mobility Initiative in the Hansalpur, Gujarat. Again the same topics, GS paper 3, energy infrastructure, green mobility, the manufacturing of the self-reliance, the global integration in the clean energy sector. These are the areas where we can utilize these particular topic examples, right? What has been done recently? So PM has flagged e-Vitara of Suzuki, which was the first made in India global strategic battery electric vehicle. So it is a EV that is being developed by Suzuki, which is e-Vitara, which will be now exported to a lot of countries, more than 100 countries. Now, this can be the response of the tariff policy of the President of the United States of America. Like we are exporting more to the other countries in order to maintain that equilibrium, right? So PM also inaugurated the local production of the hybrid battery electrodes. So electrodes which are major part of that particular battery, because other than that there will be certain solution, maybe the chemical or maybe any other thing, right? So this is also going to be manufactured within India itself. Now, right now, there is comparatively lesser development of the battery storage that is there in India related with the last article. So now India is focusing upon increasing the battery value that will be now more manufactured in India. So roughly 80% of the batteries or total value ka 80% is going to be produced in India. So this is going to significantly boost the adoption of EVs right now, because of the lack of storage devices and dependence on other countries and the supply chains. This is comparatively lesser. Now, what is battery EVs? Now, simply the EVs or the battery EVs are the vehicles which are being run on through the electricity. So generally there is an engine. For that engine there is a fuel needed. Generally there was petroleum or the petroleum related products that were being utilized. Now through the EV there will be a motor. So these are the components that are mentioned, like there will be electric motor. So storage device, which is battery within that particular vehicle, will provide the energy to that motor. That electric energy will be converted to the mechanical energy, and that will be ensuring motor to move. There will be an inverter also in this particular EV. So because battery में जो energy store होती है, that is in the DC, direct current. You need the alternating current in order to ensure the movement and all. So for that there is an inverter needed which will convert DC to AC and AC to DC, right? So in that case there is an inverter also. There is a battery which will be the fuel or the storage device for that particular fuel, right? Then there is a control module. Now how much electricity should go, when to cut off, when to ensure smooth flow of electricity. So in that case the control module is also there. And then the drivetrain. So when the motor is moving, there is a need for the train, or maybe जैसे होता है ना, अगर बहुत simple terms में if I tell you, the cycle की chain. When the motor is moving, that is moving the wheel. So that particular thing can be considered as to some extent the drive chain, right? Now, what are the challenges? Already we have discussed. First challenge is the operational issue. So right now the range is limited. That's the major issue. Infrastructure for charging, that is also the major issue. Next is the upfront cost for the EVs, because there is a battery utilization and majority cost comes from the battery. Right now, India was much dependent on the other countries. That is costly. So the EV ka price is also costly, right? So the battery constitutes roughly 40% of the capital. Next is the adequate awareness ki kami hona. Lack of adequate awareness is also one such issue, which is regarding that we do not know the larger terms of what are going to be the benefits regarding this. But see, to some extent, practical issues are also there, but awareness ka bhi issue hai, whether it is public domain or the private domain. So to understand what exactly consumer wants and basically deliver those things is very, very important. So the gap that is there should be reduced. Environmental concern, because right now we are using battery, but then you are utilizing the electricity to charge that battery. Now, electricity right now, if coming from the fossil fuel, that is the issue. So you have to go for the renewable. In that also, there will be battery. Once the battery life ends, the battery has to be disposed of. There has to be recycling mechanism. Right now, the battery is also causing a lot of environmental pollution. So if the battery is not disposed of and recycled properly, that is going to create another difficulty with respect to this environment, right? The stressed existing electricity grid. So, jo abhi electricity grids hain, they are already stressed, and if you are going to add up further, that is also adding up the issues regarding that. So what should be the steps that are needed? First is financing aspect. So decouple the battery price. For example, if it is 40%, what you should do, you should try to utilize battery pooling. You should try to utilize battery leasing like this. So there should not be the cost entirely borne by the vehicle owner. So in that case, you can utilize this pooling. And right now you might have seen already across the city, especially in Delhi NCR, you might have seen those particular boxes that are attached, which is having the battery charging devices, and there the concept of battery pooling is being applied. A blended fund, which will be ensuring whether it is the PPP, whether it is the viability gap fund, whether it is the investors fund, or whether it is the focus on the technology, all these things should be utilized. Next is the scaling R&D for the new battery technology. So the Prime Minister has inaugurated this particular facility, and apart from that, there have been the technological development with respect to the reduction of the battery prices. Last article we had discussed regarding the storage devices. So R&D is needed in order to ensure comparatively, when there is comparatively more generation of the electricity, that should be stored in the form of battery. Higher energy density. So per battery mein comparatively there should be availability of the higher energy capacity. Next is the strategic scaling of the charging infrastructure. So that's what the concern is, because if the operational issue mein range ka issue hoga, people might not want the EVs to go for the longer region, right? So in or the longer distances. So in that particular cases, you will need the strategic scaling of the charging infrastructure comparatively at a lesser distance that should be available, right? Now, government has also launched the green mobility initiatives like the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan, NEMP, for the development of the hybrid and the electric vehicle. And then there are multiple phases that have been launched. Even government has launched e-trucks also. Then PLI scheme, which is the production linked incentives that should be provided for the automobile and the auto component or the auto component related industry. So that will reduce the cost of manufacturing, that will make Indian products comparatively more competitive. Then PLI scheme for the national program on the advanced chemistry cells. So you will need battery. Now in battery, we have seen the chemical batteries are also there. So in that cases, there is a need to support these particular programs also, or the production linked incentives to these particular sectors. Then India Electric Mobility Index by Niti Aayog, that tracks that what is the progress regarding the adoption and the manufacturing of the electric mobility and the electric EVs and other things, how it is going at different parts of the country, right? So this is it regarding the major articles that we had to discuss. Next is the places in news. Now in the places in news, we have Australia. Already in a previous, like I think 30-40 days, we have covered it 2-3 times, right? So the point is that why it is important, because again and again, because Indo-Pacific is there in news, sometimes certain island countries are there in news. That's why this region is important. That's why UPSC can also ask the question about that. So the capital is Canberra, right? Now the context recently is that the Australia has severed the diplomatic ties with Iran and expelled the ambassador of Iran because of the anti-Semitic attacks, right? So he has provided certain remarks against the Jews. So regarding that, the Australia is important now in the context of Australia, the political feature. So there are certain prominent seas. So for example, in the northwestern part, you see there is Timor Sea. There is on the northern part, it is the Arafura Sea, right? It is the Gulf of Carpentria. This is there. Apart from that, in this particular region, you will be able to see the coral reef structure, Great Barrier Reef. And here, this particular sea is known as the Coral Sea, right? In the southern side, you see the Indian Ocean, but in that also, there is specifically this particular Great Australian Bight. This is available. So this region is known as Great Australian Bight, right? Apart from that, there is Tasman Sea in the southeast direction, and this region of strait between the Australia and the Tasmania Island is the Bass Strait. These things UPSC can be concerned about. UPSC can ask these particular things. Now, when we are talking about certain geographical feature, this is the Great Dividing Range in the Australia. Now, majority of the country in the Australia is having the arid to semi-arid kind of climatic condition. There is also tropical conditions because it lies even between the certain territories are between like this beyond the Tropic of Capricorn, above the Tropic of Capricorn. This is the part of the tropical, but south mein aap dekhoge, you will see there will be the temperate kind of conditions also. Now, when we are talking about it as a arid and semi-arid region, there are multiple deserts that are available. So there is the Great Victorian Desert to somewhere like this in the roughly southern part, there will be observation of the Great Victorian Desert. Then there is Gibson Desert. So western and the middle part here, you will see the Great Gibson Desert and Gibson Desert, right? Then the next is the Great Sandy Desert. So in the northwestern part, you are able to see the Great Sandy Desert. So UPSC sometimes ask even to arrange these from the north to south, east to west, generally with respect to India and certain major territories. In this particular context, if it is a lot in news, UPSC can ask about that, right? So these are the important things regarding Australia. Every time we are trying to cover certain extra things with respect to that particular territory, which is important. Another thing is regarding the major rivers, Murray and the Darling. So Murray and the Darling River Basin are available over here. So this is regarding the Australia, which is also very, very important from the perspective of India's cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region. Now there are certain quick updates that we are going to see regarding the today's news. Right. So in the today's news today, we are going to see certain quick updates. The first in this is the National Green Tribunal, NGT. Now the context is that recently Supreme Court has strongly criticized the NGT's order to ED for probing certain things, which is a violation of the scope that is available for the NGT, right? So NGT is important body now. Again and again that comes in the news. So that was formed in the through the NGT Act, National Green Tribunals Act of 2010. Now this is pertaining to the dealing the cases with respect to the environmental aspects, right? So the environmental protection and the conservation of environment related cases are being done, and so that it should be resolved expeditiously, there is formation of this National Green Tribunal. The timeline is provided for the 6 months that they have to resolve. Once the cases comes to them, that particular thing should be resolved in the 6 months. This is the timeline, and this is based upon the principle of natural justice. So the Code of Civil Procedure does not work over here. It is working on the principle of natural justice. Now the principal bench is in New Delhi, and then there are certain other benches, 4 other benches that are there, like the Bhopal, Pune, Kolkata and Chennai. You can see all the directions where there are the benches available. Next is regarding Project 17A. So previously there was a Project 17 which was to develop the Shivalik class frigates, right? So that was added with certain indigenization and a lot of technological aspects converted into Project 17A. So recently there have been 2 frigates, INS Udaygiri and INS Himgiri, that are commissioned into Navy. That's why this Project 17A is important. So these frigates, frigate hote kya hai? These are basically versatile platform. Whenever the Navy is moving, whenever the ships are moving, in order to protect those particular ships, in order to identify certain kind of obstacle issues and the threat, so those particular frigates are being utilized for that in order to counter those threats, right? So protect other ships or the fleets from the threat emanating from the sea. Now this is the follow-up of the Shivalik class projects. It is indigenously built. Which particular dockyards are part of this? So there is Mazgaon dockyard, which is the part of Mumbai, which is situated in Mumbai. Apart from that, there is the Garden Reach Shipbuilders Limited, that is also part of the manufacturing of these particular frigates, right? So these two are involved in the frigate construction. Then the combined diesel or the gas is the main propulsion plant in these particular frigate to provide the energy. Lastly, these are equipped with the modern warfare technology. So you can see the advanced radar, advanced air surveillance, advanced seaborne attack tactics, right? The equipment, the missile, all these things are equipped over here. Next is regarding the 3GPP. So what India has done, India has recently hosted the first ever 3GPP, which is the third generation partnership project for the radio access network meetings on the 6G standardization. So as the name suggests, it is 3GPP third generation partnership project. It was started when the 3G related standardization was needed, and right now it is the 6G standardization. So similar body is continuing since 1998. Right, it was formed to standardize 3G mobile standards, and then eventually right now it is functioning upon the 6G related standards. So eventually development of 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, this is being done by this. Now what this particular body is responsible for, this is the body responsible for developing the specifications, technological requirement, technological things, cooperating with different bodies. So it is also a group of different country ka bodies regarding the standardization and the technological requirement in the form of standardization need. Now 3GPP forum is foundation for the global mobile network. So whether it is infrastructure, whether it is technology requirement, whether it is the communication related things, this is being done by 3GPP foundation. So now this meeting has been held for the first time in Delhi. So it is hosted by the authority which is part of this 3GPP network, which is the Telecommunication Standards Developing Authority of India, TSDSI, which is the India's authority which is getting represented at 3GPP platform, right? So it is the Standard Development Organization of India which has taken participation in 3GPP. Next is regarding brown dwarf. So basically scientist has discovered the rare quadruple star system. Quadruple star system means there are 4 stars in that. Okay. UPM J1040 and 3551 AAB BAB. Now name is not that much important, this concept is important, right? So this is the brown dwarf which is as a concept which is important. So it is a cold brown dwarf which is being entangled with the pair of young red dwarf. So what is the difference between them? Red dwarf you have already studied in the geography classes, right? What is the brown dwarf? So these are the celestial bodies which appear like the star. They are also giant in size. They are also way larger than the planet. But the point is they are not that larger in order to ensure the fusion process. So in order to become the star, they failed in that particular process, and that's why turned into the brown dwarf, which are cool, which are not able to perform this fusion activity in them. So they are the failed star. They are not able to sustain this hydrogen fusion process. So hydrogen se helium convert hona, that is not there in this brown dwarf. That's why they do not have their own light. So atmosphere is similar to the gas giant, but the size is comparatively large. The difference between them and the planet is regarding the size. So they are roughly like sometime 50 to 80 times larger than the Jupiter, which is also a gas giant. And apart from that, there is availability of the deuterium, right? So which is an isotope of hydrogen, right? So that is also there. So this is making difference from the planets. Next is regarding the programmed cell revival. So CCMB, which is a body with respect to the molecular biology, right? Cellular and the molecular biology. So it has provided this particular thing regarding the cell revival, and there have been certain observation that this could have become the possibility. They have observed certain things regarding this. That's why this concept of the programmed cell revival is important. Now, you might have already studied regarding the programmed cell death. Programmed cell death is generally the set of activities which are being triggered and that lead to death of the cell specifically. So it is the genetically regulated mechanism by which the cell undergoes to the self-destruction. So apoptosis is the process which is the process responsible for the cell death, right? So now what the scientists have observed, that if you are providing some stimulus through the substance which might not be that much harmful for that specific cell, and that cell is not getting died, but there can be even revival or a recovery of that particular cell from the near death stage. So this is like the cell revival or the programmed cell revival, right? Now see, suppose karo there are certain issues. For example, maybe certain injury that you have, maybe the burns, maybe some kind of disease which is the degenerative disease. Now in that cases, if the programmed cell revival is applied, in that cases you can reverse that particular trends, right? So whether it is the regenerative medicines that can be developed for the treating the conditions like burns, nerve damage, degenerative diseases, even the stem cell biology, this can be utilizable. Matlab, you have prevented the death of the cell, and now the cell has started self recovery that can become a comparatively healthy cell now. But the concerns are also there, because sometimes for the cancer treatment you are trying to make sure that the cancerous cells should dead. Now in that cases, if there is programmed cell revival, so again that particular cancerous tumor can revive and that can become further more aggressive. So there are certain concerns also that have to be taken into consideration. Next is regarding Arogya Pacha. So the forest elder who was Kutti Mathan Kani, who revealed the Arogya Pacha, died in Kerala, right? So this is a green that gives the strength. So it is a forest herb that is utilized as a basic material in order to provide the strength. So it is considered as equivalent to Sanjeevani, right? So it is a rare and the indigenous medicinal plant which is used for the instant energy, stimulant and anti-fatigue therapeutic properties के साथ है, right? So basically whatever that particular stimulant can do, that can revive your energy. So it acts as antioxidant, anti-stress, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, anti-tumor, anti-ulcer, and also for benefit of the diabetes patients, right? So these particular things are the properties of Arogya Pacha. So you can see that the multiple benefits make it equivalent to somewhat Sanjeevani, right? So the traditionally it was being used by the Kani tribe, right? And they are part of the southern part or the most southern part of the Western Ghats, roughly the region of the Agastya Hill in the Western Ghat, which is the part of Kerala, right? So a drug that has been made by this particular herb, and apart from that there are certain other herbs which is the Jeevani that has been developed by the Arogya Pacha with the 3 more ingredients. So this Kani tribe is also getting some amount of royalty from that particular drug also. So Arogya Pacha recently in news is associated with which of the following thing? This kind of questions UPSC generally tend to ask. Next is regarding the FIDE World Cup. So last year we have seen that Domarajo Gukesh has become the youngest champion with respect to the chess, right? The FIDE championship he had won in 2024. Now the International Chess Federation has announced that there will be FIDE World Cup of 2025 that will be hosted in Goa. Now obviously that is not that much important with respect to the venue, but the point is the UPSC is now asking question with respect to sports. So it is, since it is one of the largest and the major event of the chess, and India is progressing significantly with respect to chess, specifically the young talent. That's why this can be important thing. So it is being organized by FIDE, which is a organization which is governing the chess related events. So it was constituted as a non-governmental institution in 1924 in Paris, but right now the headquarter is in Lausanne, Switzerland. So headquarter is in Lausanne, Switzerland. Now the top 3 finisher of this World Cup will qualify for 2026 candidates. So generally, a specific aspect I'll tell you. There will be multiple tournaments. From that particular tournament, there is FIDE rating that is being provided. Now there are some prominent events like the World Cup and all. So there is specific quota. Now after the victory, these particular candidates will fight for the 2026 candidates. Now why they are fighting in 2026 candidates? In order to become the challenger to the victorious one who was D. Gukesh, right? So now who will be the victor of this 2026 candidates tournament that will become the challenger to the world champion who is presently D. Gukesh, right? So that's why whoever will be top 3 that will become the part of the candidates tournament. Apart from that, there are other qualifications also. Wahan se bhi log aayenge in the 2026 candidates, and the victor of that particular 2026 candidates will be the opponent of D. Gukesh in the World Championship in 2026, right? So this is regarding the FIDE World Cup. So with this, we have concluded the news today discussion of the 27th of August, right? I hope whatever we had discussed, the things are clear to you. Right now, the questions might be there in front of you on the screens. Try to solve them. Try to make sure that whatever we had discussed, if there is anything you found out that has to be incorporated in your notes, do that. If you want to make notes, do that also, because that will ensure the value addition. Because daily basis, whatever we are discussing, may be a chance that certain things might not be exactly as it is covered in the other material. So if you have grasp of that particular content, try to make sure that you take those in the form of notes, right? So I hope the things are clear to you and the news today of today was understandable to you. Thank you everyone. Happy Ganesh Chaturthi.